If I had to sum up today's entire video in a single word, it would be elaborate. Make no mistake, I'm not really a fan of fraud, scams, misleading people on a global scale. But at the same time, there does come a point in every tale of just elaborate fraud where I find myself somewhat impressed. Like, should someone have gone to the lengths of fabricating this entire person, including their whole life story, eventually culminating in a fake death? Probably not, but they did. And so that's why we're here today, because I read this article about this gaming journalist who turned out to be a figment of someone else's imagination, and it has truly been living in my head rent-free ever since. But first, welcome. My name is D'Angelo, and I am your professor of polygraphic microplastics, which is a very real degree that I definitely do have. Or maybe this is just me broadcasting myself talking in my room like YouTube used to be. And in today's video, we are going to look at the life and death of Susan Banks, a gaming journalist and advocate who turned out to be completely made up. And the strangest thing about Miss Banks is one has to wonder, if you're doing the right thing in a way that is a complete lie, does it kind of balance out, or is it just all terrible? That's the question I'm hoping we can find today as we go through this article. But regardless of the answer, you're gonna see that this is just unhinged behavior either way. So I found the article in question on IGN because yes, I am a gamer. I know. I just try to keep it off of my channel, but sometimes it just pops up. The urge to simply release a gaming video grows stronger every day. And the worst part is I feel like some of y'all would watch it though. Like I feel like low-key it would be fun. But anyways, point is IGN equals gaming. I feel like they're not really known for hard-hitting journalism, but when I tell you that this article from Grant Stoner is one of the greatest deep dives I've ever read with my own two eyes, it's something that simply has to be seen to be believed, or in this case, not believed, because it's about something that is completely false. A prominent accessibility advocate worked with studios and inspired change, but she never actually existed. So this is a little bit uncommon, but this story actually begins with the death of the main character. On March 4th, 2019, the accessibility community mourned a prominent advocate, Susan Banks. Banks's partner, Coty Craven, that's a name if I've ever heard one, announced her passing on social media. The industry lamented the loss of an individual who helped raise awareness for accessibility in games, particularly for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. And so the unfortunate death announcement is here, along with a GoFundMe link, which is not uncommon when someone passes away. But as you're going to see, that is quite shady in retrospect. So the article goes on to point out that the strangest thing about this very fake person was how real her impact was. I mean, she interacted with devs from Ubisoft. She created this entire website, Can I Play That?, which tracks accessibility in video games. And after her passing, an award was named after her to honor people that uplift their communities and educate others on the importance of accessibility. So far, so good. Cue the instant left turn. However, in the years since Banks's alleged death, sorry, the phrase alleged death is crazy. Actually, can that be me? I'm not planning on dying for another few hundred years, but when I do, I'm not even going to confirm it. I'm just going to circulate rumors that I died, and everyone's going to be like, man, is he dead? That's crazy. I will be dead, to be clear. But will I? In the years since Banks's alleged death, mounting evidence and accounts from those close to her work suggest that she was not the person she claimed to be. In fact, some are convinced that Banks may never have existed at all. So when I got to that part, I was like, okay, it's the partner. Coty Craven, when is it not the partner? But I was like, you know what? Let's see. So the article goes into Susan Banks's origin story. I guess her account first appeared in 2015, and she identified as a deaf, Muslim, queer, disabled gamer nerd. Her posts regularly explored topics like deaf and hard of hearing accessibility in games, living with mental health related disabilities like schizophrenia, racism, and being in a queer relationship. So apparently she was an immigrant from Turkey. At one point she was a model, a professor of deaf studies, and apparently she achieved all of this before the age of 30. But IGN reached out to the university she was apparently a professor at, and they replied stating that nobody by the name of Susan Banks was ever employed at the university. Now this on its own is certainly a red flag, but I wouldn't say it's 100% proof that someone doesn't exist. I mean, people use fake names on the internet all the time. My name is actually D'Angelo, but my point remains. And here's one of Susan's posts where we can really get familiar with her voice. Had to fill out a form at a new doctor that for some reason asked my race. I selected other and wrote Arab like I always do, and the receptionist wanted to argue with me. Honey, I think you checked the wrong box. You're Caucasian. I think I know where I was born. No? Now I know some of you may be thinking that sounds far-fetched, but I have to be honest. It does. Yeah. No, it does. Anyway, Susan had a precursor to her popular website at this time, in which she did largely the same thing. She would give games ratings based off of their accessibility, and those posts started popping off among people who were in the accessibility community. It's during this time that founder and executive director of Able Gamers, Mark Bartlett, notes that Banks' social media advocacy made them cross paths. Banks would regularly reply to conversations posted by members of the Able Gamers charity, and soon Banks became a prominent advocate within the space. Honestly, it sounds like Susan was that girl, period. If only girls were real. Banks was never alone with her work. While in Chicago, she allegedly met Coty Craven, who she originally hired to walk her dog, according to private messages between myself and Craven. Shortly after their introduction, Craven announced to friends and family on social media that the two had entered a romantic relationship. Now, this next part it's a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Do y'all remember early internet fanfiction culture where people would come back sporadically with new updates for their supernatural fanfic, and the story itself would be pretty standard stuff, but the caption would be like, hey guys, sorry this update took so long, I low-key got kidnapped, I was just sold and then shipped halfway across the country, but I narrowly escaped, but thankfully I had time to write this 50,000 word scene, so enjoy. That is kind of what this next sequence is giving me. So Craven claimed that Susan dropped a KitchenAid mixer on her own foot, leading to her leg being amputated, which somehow led to her other leg being amputated as well. However, when people tried to send flowers to the hospital where Susan was allegedly staying, God, now I'm saying allegedly, the hospital said there was no patient by that name. That led the person who tried to send the flowers to do a deeper search because she got a funny feeling that Craven may have been misrepresenting things. I searched for all the ways I knew to look for the existence of a woman named Susan Banks and her sister and couldn't find anything. This source also noticed that Craven would receive gifts and consistent praise and attention every time he would post about Banks's ailments or recoveries. It's almost giving Munchausen's by proxy, but the proxy doesn't even exist. You're just making it all up. I guess it's just giving chronic liar. I don't know how else to put it. So this wound up turning into a full investigation, which revealed that no immigration record, address, employment record, marriage license, or birth certificate for a Susan Banks was found. IGN received the receipt of the investigation and can confirm the source was billed for these services. But here's the thing. There wasn't really much that source could do about that at that time, and it turns out that Banks and Craven were just getting started. So years after the investigation, Banks's profile started raising so high that she was doing interviews, always through email or private messages on Twitter or facilitated by Craven. In fact, she almost exclusively existed on Twitter, with the occasional email when she really needed to. But again, by itself, that's not actually weird. The Able Gamers charity senior director of development, Steven Spohn, said, I never spoke to either Banks or Craven. It did not seem odd at the time because I have many deaf friends who also like to avoid Zoom calls if possible because texting is easier. And because other people were interacting with them, I assumed they were real. There are many people I have met on Twitter that I have never met anywhere else. And with the lack of accessibility features built into certain platforms, aka no reliable live captions or things like that, I honestly don't think that there would have been any reason at the time to assume that something shady was going on. But oh, it was going on indeed. So fast forward to 2019, back to the death announcement, and in a private conversation between the author and Craven claimed that Banks died while playing video games from a stroke. In another private text with a different individual viewed by IGN, Craven claims she died while streaming, and that at least one other person had a clip of her death. But as I'm sure you can guess, there's not really any evidence of this stream ever having been live. So regardless, people were quite sad about this. Understandably so, with the space that Susan occupied within the community. Even years after her death, the industry continued to mourn her loss and celebrate her work and impact, something Craven frequently and publicly acknowledged for years, thus attracting the attention of developers across studios. So I guess if that was the whole story, it would be at most extremely weird. But when you throw money into the mix, that's when it crosses the line into not okay at all. I mean, to be clear, this wouldn't be okay either way, but you'll see what I mean. Several weeks before Banks' apparent death, Craven created a GoFundMe for the launch of Can I Play That? And after Banks had died, organizations like Able Gamers directly shared the GoFundMe campaign. People thought they were honoring her legacy, but instead they were low-key getting played. Craven used the sympathy generated by Banks' death to push himself into the spotlight. For years, he continually posted on social media about her passing, her legacy, her impact, even publishing stories about his experience with grief, especially pertaining to Banks' death. But things were starting to catch up. In 2022, the International Game Developers Association received an email from an anonymous source questioning whether Banks had ever actually existed. The director at the time decided that, at worst, even if somebody was maybe using a pseudonym, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I did not see much of a concern there, considering how often people receive hate and harassment for advocating for DEI issues in the games industry. Staging a campaign to discredit a disabled woman of color who did a lot of work and made headway is the exact kind of thing that would not be surprising if it happened in gaming. Let's just be real. So personally, I see why people were hesitant to take this at face value. Anyways, when Craven was confronted with this, he claimed the questioning was affecting his mental health and wanted to simply remove Banks' name from the award. Thus, the Susan Banks Advocacy Award simply became the Advocacy Award, and any mention of Banks ceased. You know how they say life is sometimes stranger than fiction? Go ahead and do a little fiction exercise with me. What is the least sane direction you think this story can go in? Whatever direction you come up with, I promise the story is about to head there at light speed. Since Banks' death, Craven has posted about 2 similar romantic relationships with fellow games accessibility advocates, Tubi Hamid and Damaris Burrow-Vaughn. Both have also had their existence questioned. So the story with Tubi was much the same. She was first mentioned on Craven's page in 2012. Every story or post of Craven's would include responses from both Banks and Hamid. And yet that same investigation that kind of showed that there was no Banks also failed to uncover any evidence of Hamid's existence. Here's a quote from Tubi. "It's such an interesting game. It's a shame the accessibility is lacking. I have a prosthetic eye, and the idea of being able to augment it to do cool things is fascinating, but I can't really enjoy the gameplay." So 2 years after Banks' alleged death, which I now totally understand the alleged part, this is when Hamid starts making her way into the industry, and she talked about her relationship with Craven and experiencing the industry through the lens of a person of color. Now this does raise an interesting question. Is Coty Craven a person of... No. You knew from the very beginning he was not. And yet, Tubi seemed to talk quite a lot about being a POC in gaming. Pop culture site But Why Though co-founder Kate Sanchez says, "I had interactions with Tubi quite a bit on Twitter, always around race and disability. I've been very vocal about the importance of including non-white people in the disability and accessibility space, and Tubi would often have the same views or echo them." In 2021, Can I Play That?, which was still running even after Susan's alleged death, published a story, written by Craven, detailing Tubi's experience as a deaf person of color in the gaming industry. However, one day, Tubi suddenly disappeared, deactivating her social media accounts and leaving the industry. Man, I guess she was like, to be or not to be? It's not even a question. Bye. Enter Cody's third partner. Now we've got a black woman. Oh, not the completely different typing style. I know a lot of y'all know each other from game accessibility stuff. I wanted to introduce myself because I don't do social media. I'm a therapist, so I'm helping out with tag stuff and lending my deaf and black perspectives to pulling tags from games. Not that digital blackface. Y'all got me messed up. So Miss Vaughn enters the picture in 2023, and I guess Coty didn't even bother making a Twitter account for her, instead just publishing stories on the website Medium. Similar to Banks and Hamid, there are no pictures of Craven and Vaughn together. All the information about Vaughn seems to have come through Craven, and the profile picture of Vaughn within these screenshots appears to be a photoshopped stock image from 2015. Oh buddy, if your girlfriend is on Getty Images, she's either very, very popular or not your girlfriend. So Vaughn was instrumental with the creation of Craven's latest venture, the Game Content Triggers database. Are you seeing how all of this person's ventures are propped up by women of color who don't even exist? I'm gonna go ahead and just answer my question from the beginning. No, whatever little bit of good Craven may or may not have been doing does not balance out this amount of very, very bad. But what's so annoying is that the idea of a game content triggers database is kind of good. Why are people like this? But anyway, as Deb explains, she's Coty's partner and she's a therapist and has a long background in psychology and mental health. I'm also deaf, so I know a bit about ableism. Her posts extensively explore topics like mental health themes in games, racism, etc. Well, no, not etc. This time we've also got experiencing life while receiving intense cancer treatments for stage 3B colorectal cancer. What do you... Oh my god. So again, Sanchez from But Why Though said the conversations with Vaughn were much like the ones with Tubi, talking once again extensively about race. Coty had messaged me that Deb Vaughn was his new partner and was going to be central in diversifying who is contributing to the database. So my brother in Christ, you were inventing Black people and then claiming that you are diversifying your company. I feel like if I tilt my head and squint a little bit, or if I just look at it plainly, this is definitely racism. There's some extra steps in there, but also this is racist as hell. Craven claims he was in talks to sell the database to companies like Amazon based on messages between Sanchez and Craven. Amazon declined to comment for this story. Anyway, interestingly, Vaughn's stories seem to cover a lot of trauma, the death of a child, intense racial violence. Though she also wrote more lighthearted things, like a response to Marvel's Spider-Man 2 video game, in which she talked about feeling seen because Miles Morales is a person of color. And a senior designer at Insomniac Games actually reacted to this, saying, "Reading your article brought literal tears to my eyes. Knowing that you felt seen is one of the crowning achievements in my career." And Vaughn's response makes sense, or it would if she existed, because the game includes a deaf character. So this article was something that Vaughn self-published on Medium, but it attracted Medium's attention and the website invited her to become a writer officially. Vaughn also had a 96-year-old mother named Bess, who died for attention for Craven, but not before Craven could share this wonderful post with all of us. This is apparently Bess's reaction to playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't think most folks feel awe at their everyday surroundings. Hell, some folks don't even like him. I mean, I'm 96 and ain't climbing no trees, but I can still wonder. Womp womp. That's going in my cringe collection. Man, some people are really just out here with the audacity. Hi folks, we're still here. Ain't abandoned the database, just have a packed couple of weeks. Anybody know of any native folks that might be down to help us out with the infamous— No! Stay away from indigenous people right now. Put it down, Coty. Put down the cultural appropriation juice immediately. How many races does one man— Is this Thanos? Like, what is going on here? Anyways, Vaughn's mentions on Craven's social media and activity within the database Discord have largely ceased since March. But as of June, she was still active on her Medium page, publishing an article exploring EMDR therapy, but no longer interacts with the gaming industry outside of her personal publication. So one must wonder, what does Mr. Craven have to say about all of this? He responded requesting that IGN not publish the piece, but forcefully declining to comment further. And shortly after that, he began deleting his presence on social media. Currently, his Twitter, LinkedIn, the Game Content Triggers database, the database's associated Discord server, and Vaughn's Medium page have been removed. Now, the author Grant sort of speaks up about why this was so important to cover. Speaking as a disabled individual, writing a story like this is no easy feat, but we truly believe this is a story worth reporting, not only to highlight the unique nature of this case. Unique nature of this case is a very diplomatic way of saying completely unhinged, but also to allow the varying impacted communities time to process and rebuild. Each of Craven's partners embedded themselves into varying marginalized communities, with each allegedly being deaf, a person of color, queer, and having some form of major health episodes like cancer. God! And through Craven's varying social media accounts and presence in the industry, he was able to ensure each partner remained visible. And they go on to prove that for 10 years, Coty Craven has been getting propped up through this work, yet no evidence proves the existence of any of these three women. And for a community that consists of numerous marginalized identities, losing trust in prominent figures because of alleged lies is harmful to the overall support and acceptance of these groups and games. I mean, like, I think I'm trying to wrap my head around why. This is usually the part where I say something, some sort of final statement, but I'm dead. Honestly, I'm dead, y'all. Like, what was that? Like, what do you mean? I just feel like, why? You know what? Why? Why? Everybody's always talking about W this, W that. Oh, W, that's a why though? Why? Also, I need to close this tab right now because this comment says, that's a heck of a piece. If we find out the author, Grant Stoner, is actually just Craven again, I'm giving up. I can't even begin to process that thought, so I simply reject it. I reject it. Don't put that energy into the world. I'm excited to hear your take on the story. I mean, this is the part of the video where a layman would ask you to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment, but I will ask you to enroll, evaluate the video, and submit your feedback. Because I am, of course, running a 100% completely, all the way, totally, not really, but at least more real than Susan Banks University. Probably. Just ask anybody in the student body and they'll confirm it for you. We're totally legit. And as for me, whether you'll see me in 24 hours or 24 months is honestly anyone's guess. But until then, thanks for watching. Your homework for today is to... I don't know. It's a no homework day. My brain is broken.